Okay, everybody, as I promised, I'm doing a second part of BISS 1123 for this last Thursday night. And as I reviewed the video from that, the screencast from that session, I showed you where to find and to upload the work for case number 4, XLS4, and I'll show you what we're talking about. We've already done 3. And we covered, and then on next week, on the 13th, XLS4 is due. And I went over how to do that and covered that piece that's there. Now, again, we come over to the resources for the Microsoft Excel cases, and you'll see that for XLS4, and I'm just going to download this so that we don't have any problem seeing it, all that business. I'm going to show it the folder, and then I'm going to throw it on my desktop. You see, I already have 3 of these things, so I'll just go ahead and throw it down there anyway. All right. And we'll open this up. And we're going to come down to XLS4. Now this chart will always tell you, so there should be no question on your part on what I'm going to cover in class, typically an example, as well as moving through at least one, if not more, of the cases that we're going to work with. Now, we've done 1. We've done case 2. We did case 3, which is the Guardian Roofing Peril that had all of those if statements in there, and I showed you a file that's similar to that, and that's over in chapter 12. That was using conditional statements. We did the payroll ledger, and then we came down here. We came to case 4. All right, and there are a number of things that we're going to cover: formulas, the use of the name manager, cell referencing, financial ratios, and then the example is the Dabney Financial Services case in the welcome module. And we went over that. I showed you the pro forma temp over in that's over there in the Excel companion sheet, and in addition to that temporary file, I showed you another one, and here's this Excel companion content. So I'm going to open it up, and I'll go back here for just a sec, and I got it. Pardon me, I've already got this Excel sheet open here. I'll just take a look here for a sec, and I'm going to look at the Performa temp, and this is for, in fact, chapter 12 and points, chapter 12, 0.6 or 0.7. Now, the file name is the Performa temp, and so we'll come over here to chapter 12. We'll open this up, and we'll see this pro forma temp. And the point of this, again, was to get you thinking about using and developing pro formas. All right. Now, to put this into some context, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go to Bible Source. And I'm going to go to my bookshelf. I'll sign in here. All right, and here we're looking with the we're working with the POTC text. And this is the the Winston text. And as I said, we were going to be relying on kind of a visual cue was going to be figures 12.6 and 12.7. Now, I'm going to scroll on over here. And here's chapter. And here's the passage, the text passage around figures 12.6 and 12.7. And basically, they're going to tell us about the performance and how it's structured and what we're looking at here. First of all, this is the income statement, okay, and then they have a balance sheet where we have a set of data in that balance sheet. Now, what we're going to do and what we do here are all of the assumptions, okay, and then the balance sheet. And using those assumptions, we start with some beginning data, and we use that to build to use the performance to do some forecasting, a little bit of that. And we come down and we have the total assets of the firm, and then the current liabilities and the debt. So we have the current asset statement, i.e. the balance sheet. All right, and then again they talk about the pro forma assumptions for the balance sheet, and then we come down here to figure 12.7, and we see the pro forma income statement, and we talk some about what's the difference between an income statement and a balance sheet, and I did that using that Dabney Financial Services where they are comparing, as you recall, CVS versus Walgreens, and we were trying to make a decision on which stock should we buy. And we talked about the fact that we use accounting ratios as a way to compare companies, because ratio data are the purest form of data that we can get numerically. And then as we saw, we computed those ratios using the balance sheet and income statement of those two firms, and we just saw some preliminary data and just talk about which firm would I choose. Now over here, the key, the thing that I want you to do is to build the pro forma. Okay. Now I'm going to diminish my screen for just a moment, and we'll go back here to this pro forma template. All right. Now, as we look up here, we're going to see the assumptions area, and I'm going to do this. I'm just going to go ahead and to make it very clear, I'm just going to color that. And it doesn't matter what color, but I'm certainly going to call this assumptions. Now, as I look here, I'm going to insert a row just to kind of separate these two. And so we're looking at the balance sheet. I think what I'm going to do also is go ahead and add another row. Now I'm just kind of playing around with this one, and the entire row. And now we have our balance sheet, and I can go ahead and I can create a ribbon, if you will, or a top for that as a table. Now I'm going to put it dark blue, and then I'm going to have to come back and make the balance sheet white. But notice I have my assumptions, and so we have cash and marketable securities in that business, and then they want us to build the income statement. Okay. Now, just to add to some visual acuity, what I can do is I can go ahead and click here, and then I'm going to look at page layout. All right. And if I want to, I can go ahead and freeze that row. In fact, we'll come up here above it, and I can do it on the page layout area. I can go ahead and set that and freeze that. Now, we can also do this. We can click on insert, and we can hold that right there. Okay. Now, I don't often mess with trying to do the freeze or anything like that, simply because it can become kind of an annoyance and a problem just trying to get it exactly like you want it. But we're just going to do a quick little bit here. We want to hold that, okay? And so we're going to come over here, and I'm going to go back to home. And what I'm going to do is, and I'm going to answer this question. I freeze the top. And they're going to show me how to keep, okay? And they should tell me how I want to do that. Let's try that again. Now I want to freeze this. One of the problems is sometimes they want you to freeze the top row, and that's kind of an issue. So I want to freeze. Okay, I've got some panes on freeze. That's has been free. I may have that done there. No, what they did was they freeze the top row. So I'm going to go back here. That's one of the reasons I don't like this feature. And I'm going to unfreeze the panes. Then we'll be back to where we were. So what I'm going to do here is, just to help myself out a little bit, and you, what I often will do is I'm just going to go ahead and take the control here, all right? I'm going to come down here, and we've got the balance sheet, and then we have the income statement. And I'm going to put it down here as well so I can see it, all right? And in fact, I think what I'll do is I'm going to move this over. Now we're doing a little bit of troubleshooting. There's really nothing to get all whacked out about. There we go. Now, I'm going to move this out just a hair so I can see the sales growth. All right. And we have the sales growth. So let's start first with that. Now we have some base figures. Okay. And we're going to have to fill in some figures for the cost of goods sold, some data from some data from the balance sheet above. Now let's click on formulas, and let's look at the name manager. All right, and we'll see the COGS. All right, and I'm going to close this. So I'm going to put equal, and you'll see it's going to, the name manager there is going to let me choose that. It's going to be a little bit inconvenient. So what I'm going to do is I'll go okay. Instead of that, I'm just going to use the name manager, and I'm going to put using a formula. Okay. And so I know that it's going to be 075 and the value. And they're giving us some figure. They're giving us some the configurations here, but I don't want that. So I'm going to come up. All right. Now I'm going to do this. I'm going to equal, and I'm going to scroll up here, and I'm going to find the cost of goods sold. Okay. And they give me some sales figures, but they don't give me the total. They don't give me the COGS figure per se. So this is going to equal, in fact, I can just use this right here anyway. I'm just kind of doing this cold just to figure, just to play around with it, to let you see. But this will equal, okay, cost of goods sold, and this will be times, all right, the sales. Now, since I'm going to be working across the rows, what I'm going to do, I'll go ahead and just enter this in. So the cost of goods sold is going to be 75%. The depreciation, let's look at that. No, that's not accurate. So I want to redo this again. Now, what I'm going to start off with is just some basic things, which I probably got ahead of myself there. And I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to format this just a little bit. As you can see, we can spend some time messing around with this thing in terms of with the page layout. Let's look back over here to home, and to get the kind of bordering that I want. And so we'll look for the borders over here. Here it is. And I'm going to put all borders. Now I've got something I can work with, okay? And I know the cost of goods sold is going to equal this. And this is at year 0. And it's going to equal COGS, okay? Now, what I would want to do would be to go ahead and name this, okay? I would want to, this will be times, okay? And this is going to be L34, and I'm gonna have a decision to make here. Do I want to go ahead and apply the cell referencing, or what is it that I want to do? Okay. So I'm going to take L34, all right, and that's going to be times, and that's going to be times the initial sales, and I'll get that. Now, I want to drag and drop this, okay? And so I'm going to come up above here for just a minute. And sale in my equation, let's go back and look for just a moment, because this is going to be helpful, okay? In the equation, all right, I'm using L34 times D30. The thing that drives COGS is sales. So I'm probably going to be smart. It will be smarter for me to come up here, okay, and here at year 1, this is going to equal, okay, D30 and I'm going to stay at row 30. So I'm going to put the $ in front of the row. And we have a figure for sales growth, okay? And you'll see that right there. That's the SG, and that's the sale growth, and that's the 0.02. I'm going to take this times sales growth. And now you start to understand, and I'm going to stay, and I'm going to keep this as a fully absolute reference. Now we take that times, and I'll underline that, and then I'll click Shift F4 up. I want to make this an absolute cell reference, so I'm going to make this $. And there I am, okay? And I'm going to take this, I've got D30, all right, which is 1,000 times L29. Now, already here, I've got an issue because I've got something going on. Now, I want to look at D30, all right, and I'm getting D30 times 0.02. So I'm getting 20, all right, and now what I'm going to need to do here is take this, okay, plus the initial sales figure, which could be either drawn from here or from here, and that's going to be your D30. All right. I'm just taking this one as an example to show you, and there we go. That's the 1,020. Now I'm ready to, hopefully, to go ahead and carry this on over to years 2, 3, and 4. Now I have, yeah, okay. And I can check the math on these. All right. Now where I messed up was the next one. It's going to be plus this first row here, this first cell in this first row. E30 is okay. All right. And what I want to do here, I'm going to go ahead and I want to take that column off of there. Let's try that. And then we're sliding across the columns. That should give us our figures. And so we should, okay. Now I want you to notice this, watch. Up here I have the D30 times the L29. So I've applied that initial sales figure of 1,000 times 2%, and 2% of 1,000 is 20. So that first figure there is correct. It's 1,020. And then when I came back and I did the proper cell referencing, I keep row 30, which is what I'm on, but I don't restrict the column. So I get E30. Okay. Then this will be times F30. So it's going to be this figure plus 2% of 1,000. Okay. For the initial sales. All right. And then I'm going to have G30. So that's going to give me sales growth of 20%. And I can see right here. Now I can take a look at this. Now, one of the things I'm doing in this Performa, and it's a little unclear, the authors have a solution. All right. Now I'm assuming that we have some initial sales and that the sales growth is 0.02. Now, if we assume that's 2% a year off of the 1,000, that's one thing. But if it's 2% per year, okay, as each increments up, okay, then I'm going to take I'm taking the 2% plus the E30, okay. Now I'm taking the 2% plus the F30, and then I'm taking the 2% plus the G30. So let me walk you through this again. Here's my initial sales figure. And the first year, I'm taking that initial sales times 20% plus the D30. So that's the 20. And D30 times L29 is going to be 30%. You notice I kept L29. I'm using it as an assumption, so I'm putting it into a full, okay, into a full absolute referencing. Then I'm going to add that D30. So I took the figure what's in D30 times 20% plus that to get this year one. In year two, I took E30 times L29, so I took 1,020 times 0.02. And I added that 1,020. Then in year three, I took that figure that was in F30, that 1,040 times 2%, okay, plus F30. So I took 1,000, and that's $1,040.40, okay, times 0.02, and it gave me a figure, and I added that to the F30, and that gave me the 6121. And then finally, in column H30, I took, notice G30, okay, that 1061.21 times L29 to get that 2%, and then I added G30. So I'm incrementing this 2% at a time. All right. Now, if you want to, you can work the formulas out a little bit differently, however you care. But notice again, we start with the initial value. Then I have that initial value times that increment. You say, what is that? That's the sales growth figure. That's the that's the 2% or 0.02. So I'm basically taking this for year one. I'm taking year 0. All right. I'm computing what would be 2% of that, and then I'm adding the year 0 figure. Then I'm doing the same thing here in year 2. I take the year 1 total times 2% to get that 2%, and then I add the year 1 figure. Same thing with 3 and 4. Okay? And then this just becomes an issue. Now we look down here at the cost of goods sold, and notice I've got L34 times D30. All right? And the L34, that's going to be over here, this COGS over sales. And the cost of goods sold is going to equal 75% of the sales. All right? So I'm going to do this. I'm going to take L34 and I'm going to make it an absolute cell reference. So I'm going to put a dollar sign in front of it, and then another dollar sign in front of it. And I'm going to put a dollar sign in front of the 30. That's the row. And then I'm going to just carry this on across. Now you say, how would you know if you did it correctly? Well, I'll show you. Here's our initial figure. And I'm going to click on this. And does it make that 0.75 times 1,000 is 750? Yep. And if you want, you could check the math. But I'll just do this. Now I've got 75% of 1,020. Here I have 75% of 1,040.40. Here I have 75% of 1,061.21. And then I end up here with a 75% of 1,082.43. So that's pretty much, that's the pro forma. I'm just going to continue to build with it. Now, if you look over here, if you look down here for depreciation, all right, we're going to need to get the depreciation figure. And we're given that, and the depreciation, the initial figure for depreciation, that's going to be 10% of sales. You say, how do you know that? Well, I'm going to go back up here and take a look for just a minute into their figure. We'll look at their sheet. Here are the current assets, accumulated depreciation, and we'll end up. So I'm going to take, and this will equal, and L35, which is 10%. Now there's narrative in the text, and they give us pretty good. And so I'm going to take L35, which is basically the 10%, times D30, and here I'm going to keep that 30. I'm working along the row. And is 10% of 1,000 100? Yeah. And then I'm ready to just drag and drop all the way across. And we can check this. L35. All right. And I've got L35 times E30. Okay, so far so good. L35 times F30. Notice we use the dollar sign in front of the number to keep it in that row. And we're basically going to do that. So for XLS4, essentially, you're just simply building that pro forma. And we have one for the income statement, and we're going to walk on across that, okay? And we'll have the depreciation figure, and then we have the operating income. All right? And our operating income is going to be basically the sales less the cost of goods sold, less the depreciation. And that operating income is also known as gross income. And so I'm going to, this will equal, and this is going to equal D30. And I'm going to keep it right there on the row. So I'm going to put the dollar sign in front of the 30. All right. And that's going to be minus, and I'm going to take the sum of cost of goods sold and depreciating. And I just went ahead and highlighted those. Now I'm going to make sure that I stay on row 31 and row 32 so I can drag and drop this across. And we'll enter that. Okay. And that's giving me a value that's a straight. Okay, this is going to equal D30. And let's see. I've got D30 minus D31. And let's do this. Now let's see if I get that value issue thing pop up. Nope, it didn't. I'm good there. Now I'm not sure what I think what happened is it didn't like me using that inclusion form where you remember I had D31 and then the two dots and then D32 and then followed by D32. It didn't like that for some reason, and probably because I didn't do the sum of those, but I'm okay with that. I just went ahead because I'm only going to have to do the formula once. Let's look at it and see if it makes sense, okay? Well, it does. The operating income is going to be $1,000. That's the sales. I'm in year 0. And I'm going to subtract $750 for cost of goods sold. It'll leave me $250, $250. These are thousands, I would suppose. And then the operating income, and then minus the depreciation, and the operating income will end up at $150. All right. And now the operating income, now I'm ready to go ahead and carry this on across. So the math works, and that means I've done the cell referencing properly. And let's watch the cell reference. Now, this is an algorithm because you watch what happens. I'm going to go here to E33. And notice it says E30 with the dollar sign in front of 30, meaning we're on row 30, and that's going to be minus E $31, the figure, and we're staying on row 31, plus E32, the dollar sign is in front of the 32, okay, which gives me, that means I'm staying on row 32. And you'll see then the F30, and the G30, and the G32. G30, and then we go to H. And our interest income, or the IRD, is, I assume the interest income is going to be 10%, pardon me, the interest income is going to be, I'm going to look at this for interest rate. I'm looking for interest income to see if they give us any on the assumptions. So sales, okay, they give us a liquid asset in interest rate, the layer. All right, so that's going to be 9% of sales. So I'm going to have to assume that. So I'm going to do the same thing here. This is going to equal D30. I'm going to stay on the row. So I'm going to use the 30. And that's going to be times the layer. And I'm going to put a dollar sign in front of the L. That is the column. A dollar sign in front of the row. Into that figure. And $90, yep. So that's why I've made an interest income. I'm going to carry that all the way across. Okay. And then my interest expense, that's going to be, they show us up here, the interest expense, let's see, the interest expense, the interest rate is going to be 10%. So we were making 9% on our liquid assets, right? And that would be the sales. Because that's going to be, basically, that's going to be cash, and they don't show us what the cash figure is, but that's okay. We're going to take the layers, 9%, and the interest rate on the debt, IRD, is going to be 10%. All right? And we're going to assume that the interest rate, the interest expense on debt is equivalent to 10% of our 10% of sales. Now, we're given a debt figure for, we're given a debt figure up here for year 0 of 180. Let's look over here if we can see it, if they give it to us. And so the interest income at year 0 is going to equal, and they give us that debt. And so we get the initials. They give us the rate and payout. So we're going to look around here and see if we can find a debt figure. Fixed assets. Here's our debt. Okay. And I'm going to make that, keep that fixed. Okay. And that's going to be times, and we're going to come down here, and our interest rate on the debt, our interest expense, that's the interest rate we're going to pay is 10%. So that's going to be times L31, and we're going to make an assumption here, and we're going to assume that that is the debt. Now I'm looking to see if they have any figures for current, or they just have all they have a figure for debt, and we can only assume, and the textbook doesn't tell us differently, that our debt is fixed. So we're going to assume we're paying $18,000 or is per year. I'm going to carry it on across there. Okay. And then we're going to get the income before tax. And I'm going to start at year 0. And this is going, and we're going to get they have the income before taxes. And so this is going to equal, all right, operating income. Okay. I'm put a dollar sign in front of the 33. And that's going to be, this is year 0, and it's going to be minus let's say our income before taxes is going to be, well, we're going to take our D33, and then we're going to take D34, which is our interest income, and so I'll add those two. I'm just coming in this cold, so you have to do a little bit of fishing around. And I'm going to put those in parentheses. And I'm going to take that minus the interest expense. And I'll keep that on row 35. And let's look at this for a moment. Now, let's notice what we've got. This is my income before taxes. All right, my income before taxes is going to equal, I'll take them hot, it's going to be D33, which is my operating income, plus my interest income. All right, and that's going to be minus D35, which is my interest expense. Okay. Now let's look at the math here for a minute. 150 plus 90 is 240. Minus 18 is 222. So I should have 222. Let's see what we get. And we do. And since we've done the cell referencing properly, we can just go ahead and carry this on across. I'll see that again. And notice how we move through the column, but we stay on the same rows with each of these. Then we have the taxes, and the taxes are going to be, the tax rate's 53%. So this is going to equal, and I'll get the tax rate right here, and that's L33. And I'm going to put a dollar sign in front of it because it is an absolute, it's going to be that rate, okay? And we're going to take that times, and that will be times, in this case, D36. So I put the D, and then a dollar sign 36. Okay. Now, and then I just carry this on across. Right? And if I've done it correctly, I'm going to see this unfold. The L33, that's an absolute. That's why I use the absolute cell referencing. That's an assumption. And I'm moving along the row. So the columns will change, but the row is going to stay the same. And then my net income is going to, and we'll just go ahead and do that, is going to equal D36. So I'm going to put a 36. Put a dollar sign in front of the 36 minus D37, excuse me, and I'm going to put a dollar sign in front of the 37 because I'm working through that row. And does the math of this make sense? Yes, it does. 222 minus 117.66 is 104.34, and I'm good to go. And then I'll just pull this on over. All right. Now this is case number 4. All right. And this is why I said I wanted you to upload and where you would find it. All right. And so I've done the income statement. And you could see how I've used the cell referencing plus the assumptions area to build those figures. All right. So I'm going to save this. All right. Well, I'm going to change it. I'm going to save it as on my desktop and put it here. And I'm going to save it. Now you can see it's gone from read only to being my file. And I'm ready to go ahead and upload it if I so care. And again, you can do that. But I wanted to show you that. Now, I'm going to close this cell off for a moment, and I'm going to go back to the Excel companion files for chapter 12. And I'm going to open that back up. Okay? And I'm going to go to chapter 12, and you will find a solution file. You'll see these. Let's open that up. And I think it's going to be 1216. We'll open that up. Okay. Pardon me, not 1216. I want 12.6. All right. That's 12.7. We may have to just, you may have to go fishing a little bit to find the cells. If you want to, all right. And this is why I'm not. Let's go back here for the textbook for just a minute. And they showed us figure 12.7 and 12.6 and 12.7. Now here they give us the assumptions they did. And they show us, now here they show you all the pro forma income statement. And they walk you through all of the steps, okay, in terms of setting this up. And we did this to a certain extent. So what I'm going to say is this. Go ahead and I'm going to take this pro forma, I guess this copy of the pro forma. And I've done it partially. And I'm going to click this off and I'm going to save this. And I'm going to call this, I'm going to rename it as XLSX4 key. All right, and I'm going to upload this file, and I'll go back through and look at those solution files there that they've got, because I'm kind of trying to follow where in the world. And they show you the freeze panes option up there, but you can see it can be a little bit limited. And here we have the performance statement, but I'm going to come over here back to we'll come back over here to the files. All right, and I'm going to upload this file, and I'm going to upload from the computer on my desktop the XLS4 key. All right. Now, I'm going to come over to the modules. And you now have the XLS4 key is in the file. So when it's time to upload it, you can do that. Okay, now we're going to look at XLS X5, all right? And I'm going to diminish this. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back into our resources for the case. And we're going to open this up. And we're going to look at XLS5, all right? XLS4, you did the name manager, formulas. I showed you here in Dabney how to use the name manager, cell referencing, financial ratios, and then we did the proforma temp. And notice again, proforma means for the sake of. And so notice when I did that income statement, I started with some year zero assumptions, and I just simply incremented them out or extrapolated them out as I was directed to, given things primarily driven by the sales, okay? Now, XLS5 has two pieces to it. And the file Clintwood, all right, that's over in the file section of Canvas. Now, I want to take a look at it for just a minute, okay? And I'm going to diminish this down and go back up to the website. And I'm going to go back up to the announcements section. Now, I'll make you go into the files to find the XLS4 key. And I think I had it up here in the announcements. And what was after there is the town of Clintwood. All right. And I'm going to find this here for you just a minute. And this is I have XLS5. Let's see if I can find the town of Clintwood, because it's a little bit better completed. And if not, we'll take a look at this one. Well, that's all right. We're going to look at this example here. This example for us will be XLS5, and I'm going to make it public and publish it. And I'm going to open this up. I am going to download it. All right. And here it is. I'm going to show it in the folder. And then I'm going to throw it on my desktop. Okay. And we're going to look at the town of Clinton. Now this case involves, all right, a municipality, a town of Clintwood, and they're operating, they're having to create do some budgeting, and so they're doing a little bit of work in terms of their revenues. Now, here's their starting period, and then they have some assumptions, and if you come up here, you'll find that they've got B12 times H10. And I'm going to take this, and I'm going to share it down. I'm going to wiggle it down a bit so you can see. They have an assumptions area. There we go. That's much better. Now, just like we did a while ago with the income statement, it's the same thing here with this city. They have to do some projections, and I'll just show you just quickly. Here's they have three sources of aid or money: tax levies, money they get from the state, and then miscellaneous receipts, and that's their total receipts. All right, this is a government type of income statement, and you'll notice they have these disbursements, and the receipts list, the disbursements tell you where they're at. And this is one of these where they have to make a decision on what they're going to do. Now, you'll see the assumptions area over here. And one of the assumptions is that, for example, the tax levy is going to grow 4% a year. Okay, same thing here. And notice, again, that technique. Same thing with the state aid. They assume the state aid is going to be 94%. So we have a starting percentage of 90,000, and they assume that it will go down basically 6%, or it will be 94%. I'll go over here. And then 94% of the prior year. So they're assuming here it's going to go down 6% a year. Then miscellaneous receipts, we have a beginning figure. Then the miscellaneous receipts, we assume are going to grow 5% a year. Okay. Now, again, then we see the expense figures. And it's the same, it's the same principle, all right, as before. Now this is an example, okay, and this is an example for you to take a look at. Now, again, having gone through the income statement and building it, we're going to do the same kind of thing. I'm going to close this off for a minute. Go ahead and close off, period. And I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go back into the announcements section, and I'm gonna hide that so that there's nobody gets confused about what it is. It's an example, all right? And let's find this XLS5 WIP. Okay, and it's unpublished and it's going to stay that way. Now, we know based from the chart that I built for you what we need in terms of doing XLS5. And here are the resources for the cases. All right. Now let's take a look at this. Now I'm going to come down here to XLS5, and these are the skills we're going to work on. Assumptions, forecasting, budgeting, and the town of Clintwood. I had that, yeah, that was also known as the XLX5 WIP, and that's what we just looked at. That's an example over there. All right, that's an example. I think what I'm going to go ahead and do this. Go back in there, and I'm going to make it, I'm going to publish it. I'm trying to publish it. Let's see what happens, update. There we go, it's published. So it's an example, all right? Now, we're going to go back to do the actual case, and we're going to use that little guide that we created, and I created for you, and we're going to be looking at last year.xlsx, and we're going to go into that companion, and this deals with chapter 2. Now, I want you to notice something, or I want to point out something that I'm aware of. You're going to see when I say, for example, what part of the related text material. So you say, Dr. Harmon, in the book, where's this? What does this relate to? Where is this from? I'm moving you through what I think are going to be some of the, I'm kind of trying to build your skills, and they don't exactly coincide with how that textbook would have you do that. So we're we're going to kind of jump back to chapter 2, and you'll see this chapter 2 figure 215, and that's the last year. Let's get the file open first of all right? And these are and we've got the resources, and we'll go to the companion, all right? And we're looking for that file that we want to use, and that's the last year Excel file. So we'll open this up, and we know it's in chapter 2. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to see if it's in the last year temp. Is that what it chose for us to do? Last year XLSX. And it's in the templates or the practice. And I'm going to look at, let's open up. And it's going to be based upon, let me open this back up again. Figure 2-15. So let's go back over to the textbook for a moment. I've got the textbooks open up in my vital source. I'm going to go to vital source, and I'm going to go up here to the content, chapters, and I'm going to look for chapter 2. And they talk about range names and all this business, and I'm just going to go to chapter 2. And I'm going to come down here to chapter 2, if I'm not mistaken, 15. Figure 215. Let me open this back up. Yeah, it's figure 215 is the part of the text in that chapter that provides us the narrative. Now, what I'm trying to do here is accomplish a couple of things. Number one, walk you through the process, and at the same time, save you from having to go through all of this type of work, okay? And figure 215 shows us about creating a range name for a year, all right? And that's just simply we're going to be doing some growth, and we're going to declare a name, and we've done that for a particular variable. Now, I'm going to diminish this down, all right? And I'm going to go back in to the Excel companion files. I'm going to open those back up. And I open chapter 2. I'm going to look at the templates first and see if it looks like what we've got there. Last year temp. Let's go back up and look at the practice files. And then let's go back up and look at the solution files. And I want to see which one of these it looks like. That's not it. And no, that's not it. So let's just stick with that. We'll go back to the two, and we'll look at the templates. I'll open that up, and I'm going to get last year temp. Okay. And we'll work with that. And I have that file here. All right. Now, what they want us to do, and again, let me open back up to the text. All right. And this is based, and remember, I'm referring to, we're looking at figure 215. Now, they ask a question. I'm computing projected annual revenue as a multiple of last year's revenue. Is there a way to have a formula look like 1 plus growth times last year? And it says the file last year.xls contains the solution to the problem. Okay. And so let's find that. We'll open that up. It should be in the it should be over there in the solution files, but I didn't find it. So we're going to do this. All right. Now my revenue is $300, and I want to show that it grows 10% using the name manager. Okay. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to click on formulas, and I'm going to click name manager. Okay. And I'm going to click new, and I'm going to find, and I've got this file, and I'm going to call it growth. All right. And it equals sheet B, pardon me, it equals B3 here in the sheet. All right. Now, I'm going to say that is okay. I'm going to close this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this into a formula. And this is going to equal, pardon me, this will equal equal 0.1, okay, times it'll equal 0.1 times 1. Let's do this right here and we'll see what we got. Okay, be equals 0.1. And I want to add another increment. So I've got the growth. Let's go to the name manager for a minute. I've got the name called growth. And then I want to add in the increment. Now, if we go back to the textbook for just a minute, they're going to give us a clue. And they're going to show us last year, okay, times 1 plus growth. And they're going to have us use that name to do that. So I've got the growth, okay, and they utilize a name for last year, right? And I'm not real revved about that. I have the growth factor, okay, and so I'm going to start here with 2012. And I guess if I want to, I could go ahead and put this in as, and I'm going to go ahead and define a name. I'll go to the name manager, I'm going to click new, and I'm going to call that last year. Now let's see what we can do with this. I'll click OK. All right. So I've got these two. Now I'm going to try to compute this, and I'm going to click equal growth times, and I'm going to use the name of the formula. I think I had it. Let's stop here for a second because I don't think I named that variable correctly. Okay, let's go back up here and click go to the name manager. There it is. I want to edit that and click edit, and I'm going to call it last underscore year. Okay. All right. Now I'm ready to go. And I'm going to put equal, and I can use these in the formula, so I want to make sure I show you how to do that. I'm going to use the formula, growth, okay, and that's going to be times, and I'll use the formula, last year, and I'm going to put this in parentheses. Pardon me. Plus, I'm using the formula last year. let's see what I get. And I get 330. Now I'm going to try to carry this on down, and I may have needed to have made last year all of these cells. Let's see what I get. Yeah, there's where I made a little bit of a mistake. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to redefine last year. Okay? So I'm going to come back in here to the name manager. And on last year, I'm going to click that and then click edit. And I'm going to make last year refer to these figures. Okay? Now I'll close. Now I'm going to try to use this formula, and I'm going to click using formula, and this is going to be growth, okay, times, now using the formula, last year, okay, I'll put those in parentheses, okay, and that's going to be plus, and that would be last year. And we'll see what we get. It's giving me a circular reference. So how do I want to do this? All right. Okay. A little bit of fumbling around here. So let's go back to the name manager for just a minute. It's this last year one that's problematic. So I'm going to delete that because it's giving me some issues, and I'm going to create a new one. Okay. Now, I'm just going to show you just a real quick and dirty way to get through this. Now I can make these. Let me take you back to the text for a minute. I want to show what they're talking about. Here they use last year plus 1 plus growth, okay, and they've used this. They use this formula, all right, and so they paste that name in that list, all right, and so you could paste the range name, and basically they let you compute the revenues, and so you start with the B3, the growth, and then as they're walking you through this narrative, use the name box to name B3 growth. So you're using the name box there, and then last year is going to be that cell B6, and then you create the range for them. Now, it's a little more complicated, I think, than what you'd really want to do. And so I'm going to go back here for a moment, and I'm going to go ahead and keep this name function, all right? And here's what I'm simply going to do. I have a defined name. Pardon me. I'll go back to the name manager. And there are different ways to do this. It's just what's comfortable for you. I've got growth. And so I'm going to start here. And this is going to equal growth times, and I'm going to use cell referencing. And what I'm going to do, notice what I'm going to do here. I'm going to put a $ in front of the column. In fact, I don't need that parenthesis there. And I'm going to put growth, and I'm going to put a B and a dollar sign in front of the B6, and that'll give me the increment. That is the growth, which is 10% per year. And that'll be plus, and I'm going to put in dollar sign B6. Okay? And let's see what we get. Now, I should be able to just simply drag and drop this and not have to mess around with the name box and all that stuff. I kind of like to do it like this so I can see it. And I use the name manager where it works. Name ranges can get really tricky. So I'm going to go ahead and come on down here and drag and drop and see what happens. And there we go. Now to check this, now this is how I would do it. So I'm going to post this as your key for XLS5. I really say keep it simple. Now, the text will show you how to do the name box and paste a range of cells and all that business, which is fine. On the other hand, if you just do the simple formula and you use the absolute cell referencing, you can string this thing for down as long as you want. The other reason I like that is that it makes you think about the algorithm or the process that you're going through. Notice what's going on here. Now I'm going to click this. And notice it's growth times B6 plus B6. And that's pretty simple, 10% is 330. Now I have another. Growth is, it equals the growth, which is an absolute, plus B7, okay? Times B7 plus B7. Same thing here. Same thing here. Same thing here. Same thing here. And same thing here. And if I want to check my work, I can just simply do this. Equal 330 times 1.10, and that's what I get. And my math is good. See, all I really have to do, right here, if I have my initial value, and this is me again, just I'm saying keep it simple, and so I use the absolute. I use the assumption area, and then I take it times the figure, and then I say, okay, am I working through a row or a column? Now, you notice just a while ago when we did all of that income statement, we worked on rows. Now we're working on a column. And so we want to stay in column B, and I said it's growth times B6 with a dollar sign in front of the B, so it stays in column B, plus B6. And again, the dollar sign in front of the B so that we stay in the B. And notice as I come down, I'm in B6, B7, B8, okay, B7, okay, and because I'm going the prior year, B8, B9, B10, B11, B12. You say, wait a minute, those don't coincide. Well, think about this. I'm taking last year's, I'm calculating 10% of the prior year, okay? I'm adding that to the prior year to get the figure for the current year. That's all I'm doing. All right, well, folks, I'll tell you what I'm going to do with this file. I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to save it on my PC, on my desktop. All right, you'll see it. And I'm going to call this key XLSX5. Now, if you want to go into the textbook, and this is why in the guide, I tell you if you want to go take a look at figure 215. If you want to follow the narrative, look at the book and try it, and try using a number box and all that, you're good to go. I often find what I think are better, quicker solutions to this stuff. And so I show you an example. I show you the textbook where it gives you a full narrative and walk you step by step by step. Or I show you maybe some shortcuts that will work. So I'm going to call this key XLS 5. All right. Now I'm going to do something here. Close this file off. And I'm going to go back up. Now I'm over here and I'm going to go back to Canvas. All right. And here's the 5 work in process. And I'm going to add an XLS 5 key. All right. And so I'm going to upload a file. So I'll go to the Files section. And I'm going to upload. I'll find it up here on my desktop. Key XLS X5. All right. Now, go back to the modules. And this, of course, is for due next week. And so we'll go back to the module. And I'm going to close this off. And we'll come here for the week of 9/13. That's going to be week 3. XLS 4. You'll find the key to XLS 4 there in the Files section, and you can upload it. And in the same story, XLS 5, the key, XLS 5 key is in there. Now again, I want to clarify, just to make sure that I don't confuse you too terribly. If you look at this file where I talk about the sources, all right, let's take XLS 5, we just finished it. Here are the kinds of tasks or business problems that we're going to be working with. For example, use of assumptions and then trying to do some forecasting and budgeting, all right? Well, I showed you a good example, and that's that town of Clintwood, XLS 5 work in progress, that shows you how to set up an assumptions area and then do budgeting, extrapolating out. And that assumptions area assumed certain kinds, certain revenues would grow or they would decrease. And the same thing with expenses. Okay? Now, the last year, that file, we'll call it, pardon me over here, the last year file is in that companion zip file, and I direct you over to chapter 2, figure 215. Now, again, what they do there in the text is show you the use of the name box and defining names. I'm going to go back over there for a moment. All right. Now, here they're walking you through some more cell referencing and some conditional statements, and then we come down to figure 12.5. And now, look, 2.5. I'm sorry, chapter 2, 215. Make sure I'm right about that. Yeah, chapter. It's in chapter 2. It's figure 215. So we're down to figure 215. We're in chapter 2. Now go through and find chapter 2. Figure 215. And here we are. And here they're wanting you to do that extrapolation of those revenues, 2014 to 2021, and they walk you through a process where you have equal last year times 1 plus growth. All right. Now, the first thing they have you do is they tell you to use the name box to name cell B3 growth. And you see they have in B3, and they tell you that the figures. So they tell you in B3 to call that growth. Now, I'm looking at it, and they're saying B3 name box name cell B3 growth, but as I'm looking at it, I'm seeing it equals B6. So that's one of the things about this text sometimes has a little bit of a problem, right? And then we have a name last year, and that's B6. Well, that makes sense, right? And what they want us to do is to go ahead and create that name of range, a name range, okay? And it's a little tricky, and so if you want to try this and play with it, it's fine. I essentially do the same thing in this case, in this key that I just created, and we'll open it up back again. I'll show you. Oh, you get it. I'm going to go to the name manager, and I have named cell B3 as growth, and it has it has a value, and you'll notice there's the reference. Okay. Now, let's see what I did. Here's my initial value. And so I'm assuming that this $300, it's going to grow 10% a year. And I want to compute revenues 2011 through 2018. So notice what I'm going to do here next. I'm going to take growth times B6 plus B6. Cell referencing, understanding it, is the key to getting to skip all of these confusing things at times with Excel, with name ranges and naming a certain box and all that stuff. I use the name manager to calculate growth, and and I can click and use it in the formula. And then I use the cell referencing to reference each value as I go down. And I put the $ in front of the B, which says I'm going to stay in the column. And then I'm going to add that again. And as I've showed you before, okay, what will happen is the column stays the same, but the row changes. When we did the income statement, it was just the opposite. The columns changed, but the rows stayed the same. Okay, so these two cases show you how I use cell referencing. If I use a cell reference, I'm just going to show you here real quickly. This is an absolute cell reference. $A, $1 means, can say it, it's like I have a pin. I stuck a pin in that cell. If I put, and that's what we call a pure absolute reference. If I put in $A, okay, and then 1, what I'm saying is I am putting a pin in the column. I'm going to stay in column A. I don't care how many rows I go, I'm going to stay in column A. Then, and that's called a relative cell reference using a column. Now I'm going to use a relative cell reference using a row. I'm going to put A, notice, then the $, then a $, and then the 1. when I put the $sign in front of the 1, that says I'm working in row 1. I'm going across, okay? And then finally, and this is called a relative cell reference row-oriented, if you want the technical name. This one up here is a relative cell reference column-oriented. This is an absolute cell reference. And then I have a pure absolute reference, and then I can have a pure relative cell reference, which is this. A1 with no designation of do I stay in the column or I stay in the row. And what you'll find is that you can get some really funky results if you do it. Now, I'm old school and I say a lot of times if I just do that initial formula correctly and I use the cell referencing, I'm done and I'm good and I can see it. And that would be, again, this would be what we would call a pure relative cell reference. Okay? Well, I'm going to close this off. I've uploaded the keys for XLS4, which is due next week. I've uploaded the key for XLS5, which is due next week. And you can find them in the Files section of Canvas. All right. And I'll go back over here. And those are due. And then you'll have the quiz. You say, all right, you're working ahead. What's the point? Well, I'm working ahead for a couple of reasons. First of all right, it lets me have a moment to just explain. Now, you can try these, and I'd like you to. As I've told you, this workshop credit, all I want you to do is try. I do have the keys there so you can see the simplest and easiest way to do it. All right? And I have those up there in the files. And then I work ahead for a simple reason, so that I work ahead so that you can have a week to digest what is coming up and what I've done, and so that we can get our cases out of the way, the workshops, so when we come to the end of the course and I have some projects for you, or when you have an exam and you have a hands-on portion, you've done that, okay? And again, the XLSX4 key is there in the Files section of Canvas. Ditto XLSX5. And again, a key piece here is for you to go into that Excel sheet where I explain to you what we're learning. Here's an example, okay? Here's what I want you to turn in, okay? The initial file we're working with, and then I'll do a key and I'll name it as such, so it's quite unambiguous about what we're after. And then you have the few texts, you have a chapter, a quiz over it. Now I do also want to have the time in class to make sure, and I want to encourage you to go over here and take a look at these in terms of a budget versus a forecast versus a projection versus a pro forma. What they're different things than they mean, and they mean different things. And you need to make certain that you understand that. Then I have a site over here that will help you put into perspective. It's called U.S. government spending. Businesses are the federal government is a significant piece of the economy, and so you need to understand the difference between when politicians say we're running this terrible deficit. What do they mean? A deficit means I've spent more money this year than I did last year. That's a one-shot deal. Or you could have deficits for the next 25 years. If you go back to the 1990s, under President Clinton, like him or not, Republican or Democrat, red or blue, whatever, the fact of the matter is that his last 2 or 3 years, we had the federal government brought in more money than it paid out. We had a surplus, and there was a lot of debate about what do we do with the surplus? Then obviously when we had the financial crisis, the deficit went wild because we spent more money than we took in because the economy went into the tank. Now, so when you hear a politician say, our children will be, it'll be your grandchildren's grandchildren paying off the federal deficit, either the politician doesn't understand, or they do, but they're using that to scare you and to confuse you or to manipulate you. Okay? Now, that being said, what do we mean by debt? Debt is a long-term, maybe even a short-term obligation I have to pay somebody. All right? And when people say the federal debt's ballooning, well, we borrow money from China. They borrow money from Social Security. You can go and look for yourself to find out what percentage of the federal debt, okay, is held by China. And I think you're going to be surprised. I think if you go in and take a look at how much of the federal debt is owed to things like Social Security, you're going to be surprised. Okay? But politicians will use confusion around this to manipulate the facts or to fool you, or sometimes they don't even know any better. So there's a difference between the two. A deficit is something that's associated with an income statement, which I've told you just shows you, boom, how I'm doing over a fiscal period. Debt is something I owe. I can owe it, and it can come due in a week or 20 years or 30 years or whatever. Now, when you hear them talking about what's a continuing resolution, or we're going to shut down the government, what they're really saying is we're going to borrow some more money to pay the interest on the debt. Now, let me say this. Do not misunderstand me and do not misquote me. It is a foolish thing to believe that you can borrow your way to prosperity. It doesn't happen unless you take what you borrow and you invest it in something that produces a return for you or creates an asset that you own. Just as foolishly, you cannot tax cut your way to prosperity, because what eventually will happen is you keep cutting taxes at government levels and you don't have any services. The roads are lousy, the bridges are lousy, you don't have enough prisons, you don't have enough schools, the teachers, etc. I think you get my drift. It's a matter of finding an appropriate balance. Now, in order to do that, I have a link here for you about Keynesian economics. Most of you are going to take econ courses, and you're going to get all kinds of information from what's called the Chicago School of Economists, so-called supply-side economists, who will tell you that the best thing we can possibly do is keep government as small as possible. All right? And that's not necessarily true. Sometimes we need to let the government expand and grow to take care of a problem. Like if we go to war, sometimes government has to borrow money to do that. Now, I also want you to understand about the trade deficit, all right? There are a lot of people, and you'll even hear politicians who'll speak as if because we have a trade deficit with a certain country, that means they own us. We owe them money. Not at all. What it means is we buy more of their stuff than we sell to them. Okay? That's what a trade deficit is. And trade deficits occur sometimes because one country will manipulate its currency, or it will impose tariffs or other kinds of monkey business to make it difficult for your country to sell to them. And we do the same thing. The United States of America also imposes tariffs. So we're not, you know, when you hear from current politicians, oh, they're trade deficit, they're being, it's absurd, because we have trade deficit. We use trade barriers too. We have tariffs. Tariffs essentially say this: if you want to buy a car from wherever, you're going to pay a tax on top of the cost of the car. Well, if you're the company, if you're the country imposing the tariff, it sounds wonderful until you understand that it also will drive up the price of cars for your people. Eventually, they will have to. And it really means that at a certain point, you may price yourself out of the market. And so that you can't sell your cars or your stuff. Nobody wants to buy it. It costs too much. So there's a lot more. I have a nice link there about you to understand it, as we're talking about forecasts. And then also this thing about understanding a budget versus a forecast versus a projection versus pro forma. As a business person, you need to understand those are different things. And sometimes people will use them interchangeably when they're just not true. Okay? So you'll want to take a look at it. And these are some important things that I want you to spend some time on before we come to class. I'm not going to test you over them. All right? I won't give you extra points for looking at them. But if you're going to be a top class business person, you've got to understand this. And you really do, because governments all over the world, every government in the modern world, or what you would say, in any functioning modern economy, government tends to be a big player. And so you better understand what they do that can help or not, okay? Or can sometimes produce. And I also want you to read this about Keynesian economics so that you get a chance to see an alternative viewpoint about how economies ought to be handled. All right? It'll help you understand someone when they say the Fed is going to try to raise some interest rates, so we'll fight inflation, or the Fed's going to lower the interest rates to promote economic growth, because interest rates do dictate the cost of doing business. Well, folks, that's pretty much it. I'll take this. I'm going to save this recording. I'm going to post it over in the announcements, and this will be part 2, and you'll have seen, again, how the key for XLS4, the keys for XLS5, and away we go. All right? Thank you so much, and I'm going to stop the recording. All right? And we'll go from there. I'm going to stop the share and then stop the recording, and we'll be done.